That's just going to take me a moment to scroll all the way up to my beginning of notes here, but here we go. You know, Utah is often described as politically stable and culturally unified. Most people think that Utah is a quote unquote solid red state. But recent ballot initiatives, especially Prop 4, have raised serious questions about how political influence is being exercised, who's behind it, and what it means for representative government. This morning, I listened to a woman talk about how if we repealed Prop 4, that's a threat to democracy, but we're a representative government. So today I'm going to talk with my friend Alexis, who is the president of the Washington County Republican Party, Women's Party, sorry, and and
Hi.
also and also on the board of UPU. And we're just going to try to
Yeah.
explain it to you. My goal here is to make politics approachable, something that you as an
Mm.
everyday mom, a busy mom, can go, "Oh, that's what that means," without getting caught in the weeds. So thank you so much for joining me, Alexis.
Oh, thank you for having me, Carrie. I was excited to talk about this. Anyone who follows me on Facebook, actually, probably a lot of people are unfollowing me because I've been very passionate about this issue.
Right. So let's talk about it. What is the issue? What is Prop 4? Just for people who don't know.
Okay, so if you don't know what Prop 4 is, this was a ballot initiative that was passed in 2018, and it created an advisory commission. Now, they labeled this as an independent redistricting commission, but the reality is actually much different because the commission is made up of 3 seats from the majority and 3 seats from the minority, and then it has one seat that is governor appointed. And so I think when you brand something as independent, the reality ends up being very much different from what voters probably would expect if they didn't look into this, because it basically ensures partisanship there. And it actually, if you take a look at the ratio, I mean, like if you look at House elections in the state of Utah, we won Republican seats by 70%. I think the Senate was like 68%.
Yeah.
I mean, those are huge majorities. That's not a 50-50 split the way you see the 3 seats with the majority and the 3 seats with the minority. So this actually, in fact, gives Democrats outsized influence. And it was sold under the guise of an independent redistricting commission that was supposedly neutral.
Right.
So
I
that's
I
kind of
mean, that's
the
that's the part that gets me really frustrated because as I listen and I look, I go into these groups that are
Mhm.
supposedly neutral, and
Yes,
I say, "Okay, well, what do they stand for?" And they stand for very leftist things over and
yes,
over again. The things that they promote, as they say, we're neutral, we're nonpartisan. I'm talking about groups like Mormon Women for Ethical Government, League of Women Voters. What I
right.
always say is whenever you hear better, like better boundaries, you need to hear bluer because
Yes,
that's what it means.
yes,
So
yes,
now
you
go
bluer
ahead.
boundaries, right?
Right.
Yes. And I think something that's important is something for people who maybe don't find themselves on the Republican end or on the Democrat end, right? So
Yes.
let's just talk to people. Um, I think that what is important for them to do is read the language of Prop 4. I think that the language itself in the proposition is significant because it essentially spends all of its time painting our legislature as the problem that we're trying to solve. And if you don't pay attention, you're going to miss that, right? It paints the legislature as the problem that we need to work around, that we need to solve, instead of acknowledging that this is the legislature's constitutionally assigned duty that they are trying to perform. And so that in itself, it's trying to delegitimize our republic form of governance, our constitutional form of governance in the state of Utah. And so maybe if you don't find yourself red or team blue, that would be something that you'd really need to pay attention to.
Right, and I wanna explain because, I mean, if you're if you've gotten a basic education, you may hear the term democracy
Mhm.
and think that means Democrats, and you may hear the term our republic and think that
Mhm.
that means Republicans. But
Right.
that's not what democracy means.
Right.
Democracy means that every single person, no matter how uninformed they are, and if you think that America is a democracy, you're uninformed.
Right.
So so no matter how informed they are, that they get a voice, and the more of the people, unfortunately, a lot of uninformed people, and I'm not trying to be stuck up here, but a lot of uninformed people are easy to get to vote. I know that when I was running for office, people would say, "Come and give me signatures and I'll buy you donuts."
Oh.
And
That
people
reminds me of
would.
during COVID, they were saying the same thing. Come get your COVID shot and have a donut.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
you may be giving up things. That's, I think, my big issue is that so many people are sitting next to, especially that group, Mormon Women for Ethical Government, right? Because they're
Mhm.
sitting next to these people in church thinking, well, they must be good because we sit in church together. They
Okay,
obviously
but
share the same
Carrie,
values. Yes.
here's my question. Are we sitting next to those people in church? Like, listen, I'm a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day
Right.
Saints.
Yes.
I am at church on Sundays. And I can tell you, I have not met one of these women in my church meetings. Not
Oh,
one.
I have. I mean,
Okay.
so
Okay.
I mean, so I used to be, and I'm not anti, but I used to be a gospel doctrines teacher, and that's what's
Mhm.
shocked me about this Mormon women. Again, like you said, you're the Church of
Mhm.
Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints,
Mhm.
but they're calling it Mormon women so that people
Yes.
who are unsuspecting will go, "These people sound great." But yes, for sure, there are people. I would say there's definitely this kind of battle of people who want to preserve or conserve, which is where conservative comes from,
Mhm.
who want to conserve Utah's values,
Mhm.
and those people who want to unravel it.
Right.
And some of them are sitting inside churches. I think because you're in Washington County, it's a little bit different, but in Orem, it's
That is
not.
absolutely true.
So
We are the conservative stronghold of the state down here, and we do things a little differently down here.
you
So
do, and when
I'm
you
probably
elect Republicans, you elect Republicans.
yes,
That's the
yes,
thing, whereas here, I know of teachers who tell students, just, "If you ever get into politics, run as a Republican because it's the only way you can win," which I think is terrible.
right.
Even if they're not a bad educator, I think that that's a terrible thing to say because you are not teaching people to step up their ideas. You're not
Well,
teaching your young people
yeah.
to really care about those things.
You're not teaching them to win on having the best idea, on a meritocracy,
Oh,
right?
no.
On letting ideas win based on merit. And honestly, like who wants to start off their journey in politics by being dishonest? The last thing we need is more dishonest people in politics. Let's be real here.
What we have though, and it's continually getting, it's getting worse, is
Mm.
the theater kids are running.
Oh,
So, and I'm
interesting.
saying that as a theater director.
Okay,
So,
so this is
I'm
something you're seeing.
right. Yes, people who are performative.
Okay.
Our kids out there protesting right now, they're not being taught, let's look at it from this angle and this angle and then make your
Right.
decisions. We're not taught there could be consequences if this happens or this happens. They're just taught go regurgitate
Right.
whatever. And that's the same thing with this. So I have seen some pretty vile things written about people who are trying to do Prop 4. And of course, the newspaper and the press and those things,
Mhm.
they are definitely on the side that you should not be able to repeal it.
Oh, yes. It's very clear. In fact, I was thinking about this morning. Much as I said in the beginning, Prop 4, if you look at their pamphlet, they are trying to delegitimize our legislature and delegitimize their constitutional role. But I think what you're seeing now that the media has picked up on, they're taking it the next logical step. Now they're trying to delegitimize the initiative process.
Right.
So they're questioning, where did the Republican Party get the funding for these signature gatherers? And they're promoting every amount of, oh look, this is fraudulent, even though unfortunately fraud is really part of the signature gathering process. This isn't something that's new, right? But you notice that the media is now joining in this delegitimizing not only our legislature, not only our constitution and our constitutional form of government. Now they have you trying to pick apart initiatives, and I'm like, wow, really? If you're not winning, you're you are just going to work to undermine
Yes.
whatever the system is that's in place. Never mind that in 2018, no one was asking who was funding it, right?
Right.
No one was asking, oh, 67% of Better Boundaries funding came from outside the state of Utah. Why weren't we asking that question? Why wasn't the media blasting Prop 4 with their campaign in 2018? And I think the answer here is very clear, that the media is very much trying to promote one side of this
Yes.
and
It's
trying
propaganda.
to, yes, absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely.
It's extremely one-sided. We see that just an example of all of the praise and celebration of the protests that are going on right now with young
Mm,
people. It's the
yeah,
same thing. Whereas if it's this side doing it, then it's wonderful, virtuous, amazing. If it's this side, it's terrible and they're a bunch of supremacists, right?
right,
And
right,
that's the same thing with these initiatives. There's a lot of funding. There's groups like Indivisible, and if you follow where Indivisible goes, you go all the way to George Soros.
right,
And that is as simple as getting on Grok and saying, are these groups nonpartisan? And then
right.
once you get past, and at first it'll say, yes, they are. And also, I understand what they claim. I want
Hmm.
to know what they stand for, what they support. And when you find
Hmm.
out what they support, friends, they support open borders. Not not limited, not limited immigration,
Right,
not our friends should stay, but they
right,
want fully open borders. Better
right,
boundaries. Again, that better means bluer or rather none.
right,
0.
right.
That's what they're moving forward. So these are always tactics. I just picked up a book, called Rules for Radicals Defeated, because I wasn't gonna buy the Rules for Radical book because he dedicates it to Satan.
Oh, okay.
So,
Nice.
but I got the Defeated book, and this is the tool. The
Mm.
tool is, while we are not in power, we're going to fight and say these things are not fair. But as soon as we have the power, you won't have the ability to fight.
Right.
That I think is a really shocking. I think that's it's it's a simple concept, but people don't think it because especially in Utah, we wanna see the best in everybody,
Right. And I think it's important for people to know. This is being sold as a way to fix government
right?
or as reform, but that is not what this is about. This is about shifting the power of who is making this decision away from voters, away from our duly elected representatives, away from anyone, any way that the people can have representation or have recourse, have a way to redress their grievances for this. So I think that that's something that's crucial for people to know when they take a look at this issue. This is not reform. It's labeled as reform, right? That's what
Right,
they're selling it to
right.
you as, but this is really just a power grab. It is a
Yes,
power shift away from Utah voters to people and groups that are entirely unaccountable to Utah voters. I mean, you see the mess this situation has created, right?
right,
Now voters have no way. It's not like we can go knock on Judge Gibson's door and say, "Hey, we'd like to have a word with you."
right,
We can't do that, right? Voters are completely shut out of this, right?
right.
And one thing that was interesting to me is how this ruling from Judge Gibson came about. When I moved to Utah, one of the things that I picked up on really quickly is people have this saying here: nothing good happens after midnight. And I mean, if that doesn't fall right in line with what Judge Gibson's middle of the night court ruling did, I don't know. It really seems to fit the bill, doesn't it?
It does.
Yeah.
So explain to people as if they've never seen it, because a lot of people
Okay.
haven't. A lot of people just get to the grocery store and somebody has the petition and somebody else comes out and says, "Decline to sign." So
Okay, and how to respond. Okay, so there's a couple things that I would say to the decline to sign. The first thing is that this group that is promoting decline to sign, particularly Utah Democrats, right?
Mhm.
They keep using that decline to sign messaging, but they want to say they believe in democracy. They
Right,
want to say that they believe in people's voices. And they keep saying, "Oh, well, we voted on this in 2018." And I'm like, actually, there's a couple things I would say to that. The first is, 4 of 29 counties supported this. So I would start there. That isn't a we voted collectively as a state. This thing passed with 50.3, I think it was
wow.
0.34% of the vote. That is, it barely passed, right? But also, I would say that this was passed under the guise of an independent redistricting commission, right? That sounds like something that is open and honest and transparent. And what Utah voters got in all of this, it was none of those things.
Right,
It was an undermining of our governance. It was not transparent. I mean, we mentioned just a second ago how this was done in the middle of the night, right? What we love as part of our republic process, we love the daylight in the Capitol, right?
right,
If you've sat on the House floor, I love how all of that beautiful sunlight comes through the ceiling. We want that kind of transparency. Voters lost that. They
right,
lost the opportunity to be represented. They lost recourse. We have no way to undo what Judge Gibson has done. There's one judge who made a decision on what map she thought was best for millions of Utah voters. And and so how is any of that fair, transparent? We don't have due process. I mean, we voters lost big with all of this. And so even if you like Prop 4, my suggestion is, why wouldn't you sign for this to go on the ballot? If you believe in democracy, if you believe in something being the will of the voters, why not sign? Why not sign and say, you know what? I think that we need this to be representative of the majority of Utahns. And and since voters didn't realize that they were signing up for all of the rest of this baggage when they approved it, again by a very small margin,
right.
why wouldn't we revisit this? And I think the answer to that is clear. They know if this gets on the ballot that voters are going to repeal Prop 4 because this is not what they signed up for. The narrative that they were sold is not the reality we're seeing.
So we have this process now, and it's relatively recent, if I understand correctly, of the initiatives of
Right.
I don't like something, I want it changed, and let me um and basically, in my opinion, it neuters our legislation.
Yes.
Com- they are it doesn't matter that they put the work in. It doesn't matter that hopefully, and I'm not going to say that this is true of all of them, but many
Right.
of them put in so much time. I was gonna say hours, but it's months that
Right.
they put in trying to make sure they're doing the right thing. Now, one of the things I do wanna push back on because, I do think that Utah is there are more Democrats than people recognize here.
Mm.
There are more people who, um, I mean, the head of the Democrat Party said it's time for you to come home recently, right?
And
So
we are glad for that. We are so glad for that because like I said, don't start a political journey with a lie,
Exactly.
right?
That's my issue. I have no respect
Yes,
for the people who
right?
regularly lie. If you
Hey,
start off with a lie, why should we trust that
that,
your ideas and opinions and I wanna go
right,
through some of their ideas and opinions. I feel like it's a really important thing to hit.
right.
So, For instance, the group this is League of Women Voters.
Yes.
So, for instance, the group has lobbied against amendments for the National Voter Registration Act that would require proof of citizenship. Does that
Mhm.
sound like a neutral position for you? Um,
Does it sound nonpartisan?
right.
They, if you look up MWEG or the League of Women Voters, both of them are on the lawsuit. If you
Yes,
look up either, and they will hammer it home, we are nonpartisan. Yeah, the gaslighting is real there. It
yes.
doesn't matter how many times you say nonpartisan out loud. When you are championing these things that you call reforms, but they all are progressive, they all lean left, the reality tells a different story. It tells a story that's very different from your name.
Yes. Here's just a few other examples. Environmental protection, health care for all,
Mm,
including things that many, many people, including the classical liberal, are against, like transitioning
mm,
children. Um, eh, let's see, very, very anti-Trump, which you can be, it doesn't matter. The group's
right.
vocal opposition to policies like voter suppression and its involvement in lawsuits against partisan gerrymandering. Now,
Mm.
when you see this map, and I wish I would have taken the time to take a picture, but I encourage you to go and look up this map. It is the tiniest little
Yes.
space, and it guarantees that that seat is going to go
Yes.
to a squad member.
Yes.
That's who
Yes.
it's going to go to. We're gonna get our own Elon Omar. Thank
Oh
you.
gosh. It's
Or
I am
Jasmine Crockett.
and I the craziest thing here too, Carrie, is that the media is trying to sell us on this.
Yes.
They keep
Oh,
trying
so
to
hard.
label Better Boundaries, MWEG, the League of Women Voters as anti-gerrymandering groups. And I'm like, you really want us to disbelieve our own eyes?
Right.
I mean, like anybody can actually just look at the map, and even if you didn't have basic knowledge
Right.
about what the word gerrymander was, you could discern that by simply looking at the map. The state of Utah has not had a more gerrymandered map in history. And so it is the most bizarre thing that you see, and they're all doing it. These
Yes.
anti-gerrymandering groups, I'm like, wow, you really think the people of Utah are stupid that we
They
can't
do.
just look at the map and see that this is a very gerrymandered map.
They do. It's an extremely condescending way to look at the people,
Yes.
but we have that going on. So we have the progressive crowd, and that's on the right and the left. The progressive
Mm,
crowd looks at the working class and thinks they're too dumb to know what's good for them. I know I'm
right.
being really
Yes.
direct here, but that is
Oh,
who I
it
am,
is.
right?
That's why they can do a dumb narrative that only Republicans gerrymander,
Right.
right?
Right.
They really think we're stupid.
They very much so.
Yeah.
Let's see. So again, Mormon Women for Ethical Government. Um, if you start looking up into where the funding comes from, it's not as grassroots as you think.
Oh,
It's just it's not.
it's absolutely not, and they're actually not transparent about either. It's very hard to find information.
I
I
know.
did find, yeah, I'm sure you did. You look this up, the Arthur M. Blank Family Foundation, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, right? Those are the big publicly, significant grants that they've received. The Arthur M. Blank one was in 2025. So, and again, these organizations, something that's important, these organizations, they are not tied to Utah.
No.
They're not tied to the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, right? They're not tied to any of that. These organizations are organizations that promote progressive, left-leaning ideas and platforms and candidates. That is what they do, and people need to know that,
Right.
right? I would love if they were transparent about their funding so that we could see where all of the rest of their funding is, because I think what you would find is this is not a it's not a grassroots effort,
No.
not by any stretch of the imagination. This is not the way that it has been painted. to, and I'm going to say this, how do I say this nicely? I'm from Texas, so we're as direct as they come, and so sometimes I get in trouble for just running my mouth, but I'm going to say it. Utahns, they're too trusting.
Yes.
We're too trusting. Oh, a group called Mormon Women for Ethical Government. Oh, these ladies sound like something that, promotes something that is good, that is worthy, that is ethical, right?
Right.
It sounds like it checks all the boxes for something that you would support or want to be a part of. But the reality is that that name is nothing more than a front for all of the leftist agendas that they're promoting. It really is, their actions speak far louder than what their name gives us.
Well, and let's look at that word ethical. Ethical
Okay,
means relating to moral principles or the branch of knowledge dealing with these. That's what ethical means, relating to
right,
moral principles. Okay.
right,
So they're using, they want you to just automatically project your principles. Oh, they're ethical. They must share my principles.
right.
But the most unethical thing they can do is gaslight and
Mhm.
lie to people.
And undermine our governance,
Yes.
right? I mean, that's the wildest, right?
Yes.
We are going to gaslight you. We're going to tell you we're nonpartisan. We're going to pretend like, this is the girl next door that I go to church with, right?
Right.
We're going to paint this picture of something that we are not, in fact. And
Right.
how is that ethical? And you really have to ask yourself, uh, if this group is ethical, would they be, again, undermining our governance? Would they be pushing for Judge Gibson to, would they be pushing her a map that
Right.
completely goes around? They know they have zero constitutional authority
These guys are not
to,
elected, you guys. They're not
they're not.
elected, and the
No.
judge chose their version of a map over the legislators. Am I getting that
Yes.
right? That's what
Yes.
happened. Like, the legislators, they
Yep.
got together, they made a map, they tried to be fair. They, in
Yep.
fact, sent it out across the state and said, "Hey, vote on the map that you think is the most fair."
Right.
They presented that, and Judge Gibson went with what I would call the slap in the face.
Yep.
That's when I saw it, I was just like, "Oh, so they're literally targeting the most and only the most conservative congressman. That's it.
Right.
That's their
Yes.
goal here." So,
Yes.
because the other ones, that's for another episode. But they're targeting this tiny little space, but that little
Yes.
space is going to make a permanent, solid, publicly,
Right.
because some of our legislators present a public face and behind closed doors they're not.
Right.
But they're coming after
Exactly.
specifically the place
Right.
where it's held, it has a conservative stronghold.
Right. Exactly. So, and it's really frustrating to see the difference between those things, that you'd hope most voters had the opportunity to look into this, right? But the reality is, I liked what you said a minute ago when you pointed out elected representatives, right? And why is that significant for a republic form of governance? Elected officials are accountable. What
Right.
these groups did and what they encouraged Judge Gibson to do and what she ultimately did, all of that takes anything away from the voters and their representatives.
Right.
We didn't have light of day. We had no transparency. We had nothing that represents ethical government. So the it's the most bizarre gaslighting to call yourselves ethical when all of the things that you are promoting are the antithesis of that, right?
Yep.
It's a frustrating, and then of course, right, if you have a group like Mormon Women for Ethical Government, anybody who tries to push back on them, they're going to play the victim, right? So it's just a very same thing with Judge Gibson. Uh, I think the legislature absolutely should impeach her. The problem is they know it, we all know it. The media is going to cast them as the
Oh, for sure.
big bad legislature going after poor, helpless Judge Gibson. These victim narratives are so real and
Preach.
so emotional. You know what I'm talking about, Carrie. It's ridiculous, right?
Yes.
And so the legislature's having to look for other solutions because it is very, very difficult for them to protect our republic form of governance and not get hammered nonstop by the media. And
Well, and
that
I
is
worry about that.
yes, that's the
I
reason
worry.
I've been so passionate and vocal on this.
Yes,
Somebody needs to.
right, exactly, but I worry about our pushing back, right? Because
Yes.
if we push back and we think we're getting moral and ethical judges, but somebody recommends them who's a progressive, quite frankly,
Hmm.
then we're in more trouble than we already are, and that
Right.
can bite us again. These are the
Right.
reasons why it's so important that the everyday person uses their everyday voice to
Yes.
get involved. Like,
Right.
we constantly think, "Oh, somebody else will take care of it." You know,
Right.
when President
Yes.
Trump came into office, people thought, "Oh, problems are done. I don't need to think about anything anymore because
Right.
he's going to deal with it." But that's not what civic engagement is.
It isn't, and the reality is we shouldn't follow people. I
Yes.
voted for him,
Yeah.
but we shouldn't follow people, we should follow principles,
Right.
right? Because
Exactly.
even President Trump isn't going to get things right all of the
And
time.
I regularly say, Why does it matter? He's not running again." You know,
Right.
so that's like I'm looking much further into the future than that, and that's where the principles come through.
And there are few conservatives who actually do that, but I do think it's important. And I do think it's important for us to engage because,
Yes.
particularly on this issue, I got a phone call from one of our representatives down here, Walt Brooks, and I was just telling him my frustration with the fact that judges aren't elected. And
Mhm.
they do have retention elections, but those are only every 6 years. By the time 6 years from now, no one is going to
Full
remember what Judge
advantage.
Gibson is doing right now in this moment.
Right.
And so I said, it's really frustrating. People's political memory, it's very short.
Mhm.
And I said, is there any way that the legislature can take a look at, if a judge is breaking the law or going against the Constitution, can we find a way to move up those retention votes while voters still have a memory? Because otherwise, I mean, it is going to cost you hundreds of thousands of dollars to try to put out a campaign to tell people, hey, remember what this judge did 5 years ago, right? It's
Right?
just so hard to do. And I don't know where that bill is at. I probably should have looked that up before the interview. I
Well, but
don't know where it's at.
in this case, I think that, we are taking it for granted if we think we won't remember what is happening
Right,
right now in 5 years because we will be in
right,
a really bad place.
right.
Again,
Yes,
I'm going back to, watching the kids leave school and protesting. Those kids
right,
are going to be voters, and they're going to be engaged because
right,
that is the primary thing about them going into school is
right,
to learn how to protest, to learn how to be activists, to learn how to say yes to the almighty state.
right.
That's where we're at, and if we don't push back in the most intense measures that we have, whatever that
Mhm.
is, I'm not trying to say what that is, but we've gotta do something because Utah there are people who, um, when Charlie Kirk was killed, there were people who were holding signs that said, "I was here when Utah turned blue." They are not looking for a purple state, Mormon Women for Ethical Government, better boundaries. They're not saying, "Let's be a little more fair." No, they
Mhm.
want to conquer.
Right.
And that's what you guys are looking at, my friends. Like this little thing in which they somehow circumvented what our law is and they created something different, okay?
Mhm.
And maybe I'm not and I am not the most like litigious when it comes to these kind of things, so you'll have to clarify. But from what I understand, the legislators are the ones who are supposed to set our boundaries for voting.
Absolutely. That
Okay,
is their constitutional authority.
right, and
That's it.
okay, that's it.
That's it.
So the fact that we've
There's not
changed
anything
it
else.
somehow
Yes.
in the
The fact
first place,
yes.
how?
Yes.
How did that
Yes.
even happen?
Yes, yes. Well, the Supreme Court took a look at initiatives and elevated them to this category of a super law, where it used to
Yes,
be that the legislative laws and citizen-led initiatives, they were on the same plane, right?
right.
These used to be on the same plane. Now, with that ruling, it elevates them to make it
And that
so
just
that
happened recently, right? In your
yes,
Supreme Court in Utah
yes,
Supreme Court.
the
So we
Utah
now
Supreme
have
Court.
super laws,
Yes. Yes. So now we have super laws that, I mean, really are very, very difficult to challenge, to amend. They have to withstand very strict scrutiny. Something that legislative laws, I mean, we repeal laws every session, right?
right?
Laws that no longer serve us, you have to run a bill to repeal it.
Right,
That is something that is very, very common practice. So why on earth would a citizen-led initiative get these protections when these people a have very little experience in
right.
actually producing legislation? I mean, if let's take a look at the state of Constitution, California.
Okay,
Sorry,
yeah.
Yeah, I don't, we can't use the word
It was
Constitution
like
with
state of
California. That was a
communism.
misspeak there. Oh, can't do that. So California, the state of California, they on initiatives this in 2025, $178 million. That's entirely unsustainable.
Right,
That's going to bankrupt them. You cannot balance a budget. I mean, and not only that, but think about all of these laws that have been passed now that are unconstitutional, and will have to then the state of California will have to litigate. And
right,
the amount of money and resources that are tied up in this, it is entirely, they are finding out the problem with direct democracy. It's bought by national organizations. So if you're new to initiatives, you need to know, and this was true of Better Boundaries, they're not an exception. 67% of funding came from outside the state of Utah. And so, people who are new to this, you need to know these initiatives are being promoted by national organization, by national money. That 178 million, it did not come all from within the state of California. These are people from outside who are now controlling what the state of California passes, except that voters are left with all the mess to clean up, right?
right,
Because they're going to be the ones footing the bill for all of the litigation expenses, for the expenses of not being able to balance a budget because they have to now foot the bill for these high cost initiatives. I mean, I think one of the biggest balloons in the state of Utah's budget was the Medicaid expansion. That's one of the biggest balloons in the state of Utah's budget, and that was an initiative passed the same, I think it was 2018, the same time this was. So we have to be willing to ask ourselves, is there a harm to undermining our representative form of government? I almost said Republican. I know you lectured on that. I don't want to mess that up. There are real harms to this shift to leaning into direct democracy.
right.
And and Democrats, as much as they want this win here, I do not think that they see, they ultimately just want a way to shift Utah blue,
Yeah.
right? But they don't realize that the means to an end is going to be the ramifications, and we're seeing all of the fallout in the state of California, and it is very scary to watch. So we should be learning from what they're doing over there,
Well,
right?
and unfortunately, so many people want to become it, and we are far more socialist. I mean, our young people are definitely being taught to be far more socialist, and you know that. You taught in a university.
They
So
they were pushing for faculty, every faculty member to adopt UN 2030 goals in our classes, and teaching our students to become social activists, to push back. And I have problems with that.
right,
I have problems with that. My job, I mean, I was just an English professor. So my job is really not to teach students what to think, it's to teach them how to think,
right.
how to analyze sources, how to think critically about issues. And every time I had them write their little 20-page research paper as their capstone project, I made them, they had to argue one side, but
Mhm.
I made them acknowledge the counter arguments. Um, because sometimes, even if you're conservative, sometimes there are good arguments on the other
Absolutely.
side, and we have to be willing to have those conversations. Uh, Arguments are not one way. There
Right,
isn't one right way to do everything,
right,
right?
right.
So I think it's important for students to understand that. And so I would have them create that dynamic in their paper where, yes, I want you to give me all of your arguments, but at some point you also have to acknowledge counter arguments. Now you can refute those, right? You can push back on those. That is healthy. That's awesome. But you can also say, hey, actually the other side has a good point, right? There's maybe
Right.
room for compromise.
Well,
And
oh, go ahead.
it's unfortunate more teachers aren't taking that approach.
Well, that's because more and more people are being taught to I mean, it's so interesting to me. It's Mormon Women for Ethical Government and League of Women Voters. And it's
Mhm.
so many women are turning off their minds and reacting with emotion. Oh,
Right,
we want to make everything and what we're doing is we're infantilizing another generation. We
right.
have a group of young people who don't think. We have a group where we're not saying, "Well, you may have this issue with this group of people, but what about this issue? And how many people in your family? And can you remember any good memories of people in your family that now you've been taught to hate?" Right? We
Mhm.
don't have those kind of conversations. And the same thing with these initiatives come out, they say one narrative, they tell you don't listen to the other side. So like I said, people will stand
Mhm.
outside and say, "Would you sign this?" And somebody gets in their faces and
Mhm.
says, "They're a white supremacist. They do this, they do this." And
Mhm.
it's all emotion all the time. And
Yes.
the goal is to get people to go back and to go, "What's true?"
Right.
Truth. And this is why, like, people will ask me and I'm like, "Why are you courageous?" Well, because I'm not afraid of truth. I'm not afraid of being wrong. If I'm
Mhm.
wrong, I have the ability to fix it. But if I'm arrogant and I'm only led by emotions and I have zero humility, I'm going to cause a whole lot of problems, which
Right.
is what we're looking at.
Well, and I liked that you used the word infantilizing because it doesn't take a lot of critical thinking for someone to say, well, why is it that you want me to decline to sign this when you absolute, and why is it that suddenly initiatives are questionable and signature gathering is questionable and out of state funding is questionable when all of those things were okay in 2018? That
No, they
doesn't
were
take a
okay
lot of critical
now.
thinking.
Look at the union bill, right?
Right,
So they
right.
they're
Okay,
okay
that's good. Yeah, they're okay
right
now.
now. There
Yeah,
are things that is the thing that makes me so angry about the term
right,
ethical. If you don't apply the same rules to yourself,
right,
then you have no right to talk.
right,
That's so and you definitely have no right to lead if you
right.
can't apply the same rules to yourself, and that's the thing. So it's been the union bill, and I think there's one more that they've been pushing, and they want people out there signing, but for sure the union bill.
Mm,
And at the same time, they're saying decline. Oh, well, signature gathering. Just
right.
signature gathering. They're huge. You've got to sign. We should make this as easy as possible. We want a
Mhm.
jungle primary.
Right.
Please, people, basic history. I mean, the things that I talk about, I teach to middle schoolers. So
Yes.
please just get a basic understanding because this
Right,
is your state.
right.
So,
And
yeah,
this decline to sign is just, it is overly simplistic on the whole, right?
right.
Because at the same time that they're saying decline to sign the initiative, Democrats have candidates in Salt Lake City who are walking around trying to gather signatures to get on the ballot. So the reality is that this is so, and we had actually the opposite problem down here. Our county party launched this decline to sign because they didn't want any SB 54 candidates, and we didn't have a single candidate in Washington County
I need to move.
who is going to gather signatures.
Right.
So
Good for you.
their decline is, it's awesome for Washington County, but also like, why launch this? I was so frustrated because I'm like, that is such, it's overly simplistic and it's conflicting to exactly what we're trying to do right now when we need people to sign on to this initiative. So I think we have to, um, yeah, we have to avoid that overly simplistic messaging on the whole of it, right? So I really did. I like that word infantilizing. That's a good word for it. Like, come on, we are smarter than this,
Yes,
right? We are
exactly.
smarter. We can have these conversations about why this works and why it doesn't. We
Right,
should be able to defend that if it's the right thing,
right.
right?
And you
Again,
know what? Here's the thing, if it's not the right thing for you, that's
right.
okay,
Yep.
but at least be informed. Be
Right.
informed into what you're doing. Honestly, if you think socialism is just it's gonna be easier to pay your bills, please, please look into socialist countries and then decide if that's really what you want. But doing your homework, being a lifelong learner is so important. You will not have the ability to do that if a bunch of authoritarians, which I think it should be called Mormon Women for Authoritarian Government, but of the things they want all the way across from homeschool.
Right.
And the thing is that once you get a congressman in who is their puppet, then the things that you care about, maybe you don't care about this. Maybe you're looking at that map and you're going, that doesn't touch me. That's not my area. But once you get a congressman in, one more
Mhm.
voice
Mhm.
of that ideology,
Mhm.
that will affect you in ways in your within your own home. So,
Well, and I
yeah,
think too, I like where you're going there, right? What's once you maybe you think that this is something that you want. Sometimes you have to be willing to look at how might this ruling impact other things. So yes, Democrats right now, they want this seat, like they are chomping at the bit. We are all hearing it all over social media, right? So but you also have to be willing to ask yourself, if a judge can sidestep Utah law, like the
yeah,
Utah statute, if she can sidestep the Utah Constitution on this issue, voters and everyone across the state should be asking themselves, what constitutional protections are safe
right.
from a judge?
Oh, that's
What laws are safe? I think that you have to be willing to ask and engage. Is this a slippery slope? Right? You can't just be focused on like this short term goal of we just want the seat. We feel like we're owed this consolation seat, right? Like it's
right.
more than that.
Well, and I love what you said. We feel because that is we cannot be judged by our feelings. I mean, we cannot be
Yes.
ruled by our feelings. I'm so sorry. I still am getting over a cold and my brain is a little bit, but we can't be ruled by our feelings.
Right.
Um, that's from biblical principles. That's from stoicism. See, I've got it. like, like, if you're ruled by your feelings,
Right.
some of the worst atrocities in history have happened because of that.
Right.
So, you guys, I need to let you go because I know you've got to be somewhere. But you guys, thank you for watching. I think most of you will
Yes.
catch it on the flip side. Um, but please, please share. We're trying to create content that is that is approachable, that says, "Oh, I can do this even if I'm a person who's never ever cared about things," because it's time that you do care. Because when we ask for this huge, huge, enormous government, when we ask for judges to be our parents, and to decide what we can and cannot do in every circumstance. And we've given them this power. And when you give them that much power, thinking they're going to be benevolent with it, they're going to do whatever they want with it. And you might agree with it today, and tomorrow you might be like, how in the heck did we get here?
Right.
And you get here by giving away your power and saying, let's just trust the experts. Become one.
Right. Right.
Just become one. Alexis, thank you so much for joining me. Did you have more you wanted to say?
Yes.
Anything else you wanted to say?
Yes, I would like to say that all of this fun with gathering signatures is going to be done February 15th. So please, 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 if you haven't signed, go on to ufrg.org. They have a calendar of all of the events. If you are here in Washington County, we are having a signing at the St. George Library, and we should have people from about 10 to 5 there this Saturday. This is one big final push. I know all of the news organizations have loved saying we're so far behind. I think we're going to get this, but and just in case we don't, please get out, please sign, grab a packet, go get your neighbors to sign. Uh, Even if you like Prop 4, why would you not want this on the ballot? Why would you not want this to just be the will of the voters? If you really truly support democracy, then you're not going to tell people to decline to sign. You are going to tell them, sign. Let's know the will of the voters. Let's know the will of Utahns.
That's excellent. Yep, you guys go out and do that. I will be in Florida, so but I've already signed, so I'm
You'll
good.
be rooting us on from Florida
I will.
at
I
Mar-a-Lago.
know. Shh, I'm not supposed to say that. Like,
I'm so
I'm
jealous of that. Never been invited to Mar-a-Lago. That's amazing. That is amazing. Go Moms for America. I love the work that they're doing. This is an awesome thing that I feel like awakened during like 2020. All of these moms all across America were like,
right.
what is going on in our schools? So, and in our communities and everywhere, right? And I love that we have this little mom army now.
Yeah, I love that you called it Mom Army. I interviewed Mom Army yesterday.
Oh.
There's multiple coalitions, and we aren't the kind of
Mhm.
people who are like me, 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 right? Because
Right,
we're all moms. Different things work for different people,
right.
but we all need to be standing for our kids. You know what's the saddest thing is that there's these kids out there protesting. If kids are protesting, then parents have failed them. That's really what I believe because kids need to be protected. Part of protecting them is giving them both sides, which is the same thing I'm trying to do for you. So maybe watch it with your kids and then have a discussion
Yes.
on whether or
Right.
not, especially your teenagers, because they'll
Yes.
be the next voters and they'll be voting for your future.
It's
So,
great for developing minds. Let's talk
yeah,
about it.
yes. Well, thank you so much for joining me. I'm going to let you go and I
Yes.
am going to get ready
Thank
to
you,
catch
Carrie.
my flight. Bye-bye.
Okay, we'll
Thank
see ya.
you. Bye.
Bye.